Good morning, everyone. Friends, thank you so much for joining us here today. I would like to ask you to please rise for the 54th Massachusetts Regiment presenting our nation's colors. Presenting the colors today is Company A, commanded by First Lieutenant Benny White.
Count 'em off. 5 miles left. One. One. Time. One. Stop. Guard. Hold. Right.
Welcome all to today's program. Yes, you may be seated. The Shaw 54th, Restoring the Memorial and the Dialogue on Race. My name is Liz Visa, and I'm Executive Director of the Friends of the Public Garden. Since 1970, we have worked with the city to renew, to care, and to advocate for the Boston Common, where we are, the Public Garden, and Commonwealth Avenue Mall. We are joined today by our partners in this restoration initiative, the National Park Service, the Museum of African American History, and the City of Boston. Our thanks go to Mayor Walsh for his commitment to this work of restoration and dialogue, and his leadership as co-chair of the Honorary Committee, along with Governor Baker and Robert Stanton, who is former director of the National Park Service and the first person of color to hold that post. The mayor was called to a somber occasion this morning, giving the eulogy for Bill McGonigal, who retired very recently as head of the Boston Housing Authority after a 40-year tenure there and died very sadly. But we are thankful for Donnie Tavares, who is the Boston's Chief Diversity Officer, who is serving in the mayor's stead today. If there are any honorary committee members joining us today, would you please raise your hands? Thank you for being here. As well as Shaw 54th Community Partners, we have a lot of partner organizations that we are allied with. Anybody here from our partner organizations? We also have a number of elected officials, which is wonderful to have you here. State Representative Jay Livingstone, State Representative Liz Miranda, Senator Will Brownsberger, City Councilor Josh Zakum, and City Councilor Tim McCarthy. Thank you so much for your presence. Russell Holmes, thank you so much. State Representative Russell Holmes, thank you. And I want to give a special thank you to Steve and Cheryl Jonas, our supporters, without whom we would not be here today. So thank you for that. Thank you all so much for joining us. Since 1897, the Shaw 54th Memorial has borne witness to our city's civic and political landscape. Standing across from the State House at an entrance to the People's Park, it serves as a reminder of the importance of speaking truth to power, of understanding our roots, and of the impact that we citizens can have on a nation. But like water on stone, the waves of change are bound to cause some cracks in the foundation. Despite regular care by the Friends ever since we restored this monument in 1981, water has penetrated into the core and deteriorated the foundation, leading to this major renewal project. And so I'm excited to announce the contractor who will be leading this restoration. The National Park Service, as lead restoration partner and with input from the city and the Friends, selected Louis C. Allegroni Incorporated and their team of bronze conservators at Skylight Studios to carefully dismantle, restore, reconstruct, and stabilize the memorial. A respected leader in the field of historic preservation since 1921, they will be celebrating their century of existence in a couple of years. Allegroni is known for its recent work on the Vanderbilt Mansion National Historic Site in Hyde Park, New York, and the Beacon Cinema in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. The 6-month-long reconstruction of the Shaw 54th will begin in spring of 2020, weather dependent. As you know, this weather is very fickle, so when it's warm enough, we will start. Allegroni will remove the bronze and all the stone from the plaza level up, install new waterproofing under the plaza, conserve the bronze, and construct a new concrete foundation beneath it, as well as inserting a stainless steel frame between the bronze and the marble surround to make sure this is going to stay in place for many years to come. This project could not come at a more important time. This restoration effort coincides with the solemn year-long commemoration of the 400th anniversary of slavery in North America. We hope this project will provoke us all to think about where we stand on the issues of race, freedom, and justice, and to repair the cracks that exist in our public dialogue. As we rebuild this foundation, we give new voice to the promise of American values that this memorial embodies. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Marita Rivero, President and CEO of the Museum of African American History, who will talk about the significance of the memorial in today's civic discussions.
We are here standing where many groups have gathered over the years since 1987. Organizations, nonprofit, profit, military units, individuals came here when they felt their viewpoint was echoing the bravery, honor to country, and high principles that the famous Massachusetts 54th Volunteer Infantry Regiment stands for. We're better to gather than here at this magnificent piece of public art that represents our national fight for all to have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The best of our public monuments have a strength that renews itself and echoes across time. Some may remember when we in Boston celebrated the 150th anniversary of the Civil War's end. General Colin Powell, African American, said here, as he has before and since, "To my dying day, I will not forget that I became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because of the men of the 54th Regiment. I stand on their shoulders." Yeah. The monument reminds us of the many times we have gathered as a people across our divides to work toward the promise of our democracy and its Constitution. In this year of the women, I will note women who were active in this historic period we commemorate today, including Harriet Tubman, Colonel Robert Gould Shaw's mother, Sarah Blake Sturgis Shaw, an abolitionist, Black educator Charlotte Fortin, nurse Susie King Taylor, and others. We can read, hear, and see in this morning's news the report of the disparity in the hiring of women. 72% of gold for white women, and low 50 percentages for black women. Knowing our full history helps us begin to see women differently, to expand our idea of American history. Consider Harriet Tubman. Freeing herself from enslavement in her 20s, she returned to bring her parents to freedom as well, trusting herself to a network created by Quakers, freed blacks, other abolitionists. Using her wits, she returned again and again for others, becoming a famed conductor on that Underground Railroad prior to the Civil War of 1861-1865. She was known as Moses. It is Harriet Tubman who met the 54th Regiment when they first embarked from Boston and this common for South Carolina and their first battles in 1863. She met them and famously served them breakfast. Soldier, spy for the Union Army, suffragist, and lifelong civic activist. For those of us here over 19 years of age, it is thought-provoking to realize that she lived into the 20th century, dying in 2013 in Auburn, New York. These stories of courage, of our ability to work across our differences of race, gender, class, ethnicity, religion, to achieve great value for our society are ones that give us courage to engage in the issues of our own age. It isn't surprising that we are gathered here today. This monument is a source of inspiration and strength. It remains as ever a platform, a public invitation to discuss the issues of racial equity, human rights. It encourages us to engage in shaping a national public narrative, one we enlarge together by expanding our understanding of the contributions all of us have made to American history. Let us use this moment when the Shaw 54th is in the spotlight to renew our efforts to be part of a larger conversation about our shared future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. And now I would like to introduce Rose Fennell, Deputy Regional Director of the Northeast Region of the National Park Service, to talk about the national significance of the memorial. And I want to just say how grateful we are for the National Park Service for the significant contribution to this work. Thank you.
So, good morning. On behalf of the National Park Service, I would like to say how honored our agency is to contribute to this significant undertaking, the restoration of the Shaw 54th Regiment Memorial. The National Park Service has a unique relationship with the memorial. We serve as the stewards of the home and studio of the artist who designed the memorial, Augustus St. Gaudens. St. Gaudens National Historical Park in Cornish, New Hampshire preserves over 100 of his artworks. We also serve at Boston African American National Historic Site, where we tell the stories of the Black Heritage Trail, which starts here at the memorial. There, we weave together a narrative that includes remarkable men and women that were leaders in the abolitionist movement, the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, and the Civil Rights Movement. This monument captures the farewell parade of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment. And as I was looking through my notes, it's the word volunteer. These men were not conscripted. They volunteered. As they left Boston in May of 1863, on that day, historian and activist William Cooper Nell deliberately stood near the site of the Boston Massacre, where Crispus Attucks fell on that cold, cold March day in 1770, and watched the soldiers as they made their way to the harbor. Seeing over 1,000 black men in arms on their way to war, he wrote that the free, the happy future was within hailing distance. These soldiers wore the uniform of a country that did not recognize them as citizens, nor even acknowledge their humanity. Yet they dedicated themselves to the nation's survival, knowing that victory in war would lead to the emancipation of millions. So as we prepare to commemorate the upcoming 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, the National Park Service is intentionally looking at the American Revolution in broader terms, not simply as a series of battles and signed documents, not as a fixed period in time, but rather as an ongoing work in progress with an unsteady march to freedom. The men of the 54th and the communities from which they came forced the country to confront the original sin of its founding, slavery. How could a nation steeped in slavery profess the radical notion that all men are created equal and entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? The 54th symbolized the renewal and the continuation of the promise of the American Revolution and worked to see it fully realized. So while the Founding Fathers legitimized the institution of slavery in our Constitution, the 54th and those that found common cause with them ensured that it was delegitimized. When dedicated in 1897, just a year after Plessy versus Ferguson nationalized the racism inherent in Jim Crow laws and as racial violence ran rapid throughout the country, this monument stood as an outlier and as a powerful beacon of the promise of our nation. It continues to serve as a vital commemorative space and rallying point for veterans and activists alike. From the anti-lynching protest of the early 20th century to the civil rights movements in the 60s and 70s to last month's youth climate strike, the Shaw Memorial has served as a crucial platform in our ongoing national story. You see, Shaw and his men are still here, marching, calling us to action, and inspiring us to move forward into the free, the happy future envisioned all those years ago. Thank you.
Rose, thank you for those powerful words. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ryan Woods, Boston's Parks Commissioner, who will talk about the master plan project to reimagine the Boston Common.
Thank you, everyone. As Liz mentioned, my name is Ryan Woods, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Parks Commissioner for the City of Boston. I want to officially welcome you to America's first park. On behalf of the city, it's our honor to partner with the National Park Service, the Friends of the Public Garden, and the Museum of African American History on this much-needed restoration. Mayor Walsh has dedicated $28 million from the sale of the Winthrop Square Garage to the improvement of Boston Common. $5 million of that will be set into an endowment towards continued maintenance for the park, and the remaining $23 million will fund capital improvements. In order to determine the best way to allocate the funds and the top priorities, the city is undergoing a formal master plan process. The mission of the Boston Parks and Recreation Department is threefold: maintaining our parks to the highest standard, planning improvements for future generations of park users, and preserving the rich historic past of our park system. Nowhere is this mission more evident than in our current development of the master plan for Boston Common. Working with the Friends of the Public Garden and design consultants Weston and Sampson, the goal of the master plan is to create a vision that will serve residents and visitors alike, while protecting the Common for decades to come. This 18-month master plan has kicked off in August and will continue through 2020. As Liz also mentioned, Boston Common is the People's Park. It's a historic place for events, demonstrations, rallies, monuments, and memorials. This is the starting point of the Freedom Trail, a stop along the Black Heritage Trail, and a daily respite for many residents and visitors. Currently, we're actively collecting feedback and suggestions on what works on the Common, what's your most and least favorite parts of the Common, and what areas really need improvement. What will make America's first park more welcoming and accessible to all? We look forward to the input from residents, business people, institutions, and park users to help shape this master plan as we map out the future of this historic meeting ground in the heart of Boston. Since this is truly a park for all and not solely the downtown community, we've had street teams along transit routes and attending Boston neighborhood events to directly engage with residents. I encourage you all to visit bostoncommonmasterplan.com to take the online survey, which over 4,000 people have to date, and find out about future events and stay engaged through the process, or attend the first public open meeting on October 29th at Emerson College's Brody Theater. We'd love to have you there. The Shaw 54th Memorial Restoration Project is a perfect example not only of our goals for the master plan, but what the Common stands for in the life of our city. A gathering place that honors all people and the contributions of those who built our country, no matter their color, creed, or background, as so perfectly exemplified by the heroes of the 54th. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come on a Boston Comm that is welcoming and accessible to all.
Thank you, Ryan. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Donnie Tavares, the city's Chief Diversity Officer, who will talk about this memorial as a touchstone for race and social justice in Boston.
Good morning, everyone. As Liz mentioned, my name is Danielson Tavares, and I have the honor of serving as Chief Diversity Officer here in the city of Boston. Just a couple of other acknowledgements before we get going. We have Sheriff Tompkins, who's here with us today. We also joined by Sheriff Jerry McDermott from Norfolk County. Thank you to Liz and friends of the Public Garden, Deputy Director Rose Fennell of the National Park Service, Marita Rivero, and the Museum of African American History. Commissioner Ryan Woods and your team, thank you for all the work you've done. And thank you to members of the Restoration Committee, including Drew Faust, Sheriff Tompkins, Liz Walker, Henry Louis Gates, Byron Russian, and Karen Holmes Ward. We're grateful for the partnerships that is making this restoration possible today. It is a testament to the passion and the expertise we have here in the city of Boston. And it is also a testament to the power of public space and the power of public art. As the mayor has mentioned before, the Shaw 54th Regiment is one of the greatest memorials we have here in America. It deserves every bit of the resources and attentions going to it, and it keeps alive the memory and spirits of those who shared in American ideals, Black Americans in Boston who gave their lives to make those ideals a reality. The timing could not be better to bring the 54th Regiment and the cause of emancipation back into the hearts of our city and our country's values. This memorial, these men, and the history remind us that none of us are bystanders to the issue of race and injustice in America. We are all profoundly affected by it, and doing nothing is not an option. That's why we become more in tune with conversations around this city and race. Our Office of Diversity has moved closer to make our city workforce more reflective of the residents we serve. We've teamed up with private sector employers to do the same. Just last week in Mattapan, we had a career fair. We were joined by federal, state, and local partners where we had 500 participants. These are the types of partnerships we need to invest more of. Our office is also working with Lori Nelson and her team in the Chief Resiliency Office to recognize the fact that we need more equity in the city of Boston, because we know a divided city cannot stand. We're not shying away from these hard conversations about our city and our country's history and our current inequalities. We're hosting the NAACP Summit next year, the first time in 40 years. We're installing Boston's first major memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King right here in the Common. Dr. King and Coretta Scott fell in love in our city, and they should be a part of the story that we tell. It's a story that this memorial and the Museum of African American History have been telling for a long time. We are all grateful for the way it keeps our attention focused on these issues of injustice. We're going to miss it when the memorial is going to be restored the following years. but we are grateful for everyone who's had a hand in producing these exhibits we're about to unveil here today. This is a living history, and we are all still living this history. And we need everyone to learn how these and those who came before us moved us in the right direction so that we can continue to move in the right direction today. And so we can be a city and a country true to our ideals, the ideals the men of the 54th Regiment gave their lives for, the ideals we must all remain committed to. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words. And as Donnie suggested, we are now pleased to present two creative interpretive programs that will support and amplify the story behind the memorial and its restoration. So while it's away from us for those 6 months, you will be able to see some wonderful images in its place. So I'd like to now invite my partners to join me in revealing the first program, which is Museum Quality Interpretive Signage, Life-Size Signage, designed by Visual Dialogue. This is going to be installed on the construction fencing, which will be 900 feet of fencing behind us when the monument is gone. So, partners? This is a beautiful image of the 54th. We have a lot of images of individual 54th members. This is the one we have of an amazing line of them. And over the images is inscribed a quote of Frederick Douglass. This signage is just going to be beautiful. It's going to talk about the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, the 54th, the creation of the memorial, and then the partnership in our work to restore this monument. So stay tuned. It's going to be very exciting to have it on site. So our next program is an augmented reality app that will make the memorial and its stories literally come alive through a high-resolution 3D image of the memorial and holograms of our narrators, available to anybody that has a smartphone or a tablet. And I want to thank the narrators, our Carol Fulp, author Carol Fulp, Professor Ted Landsmark, and Emmett Sykes. All right. There you are, to keep on churning. Thank you for lending your voices and yourselves to this effort. And I want to thank the team at Hoverlay. Where are you? Thank you so much. And John Craig Freeman from Emerson College. They did a fabulous job creating this interactive component of our program. So what you do is you go to the App Store, you download the Hoverlay app, and you select the Shaw 54th channel to begin your journey. This concludes our formal program. We hope you take the opportunity to continue this dialogue today and well into the future. I want to thank all of our speakers. It was really wonderful hearing your powerful and inspiring voices. National Park Service Rangers will now lead tours of the Black Heritage Trail for anybody who's interested. And we invite you, you see that tent over here with National Park Service folks and the Hoverlay team and Craig Freeman will help you understand about the virtual reality app and be able to download it on your very own device. Thank you so much for joining us today.